Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. Dynamite Shirt Printing, Kyle Metz. What a guy. He came on as a sponsor, and my primary use for him is drop shipping. So what that means is that I don't got to buy inventory. I don't got to buy a bunch of t-shirts. Kyle handles it all. So it's ordered online, and then he prints it and ships it, and he handles everything. And it works out for both parties. If you're looking for something else like general screen printing, he handles that. He does embroidery. He does direct to garment, DTG, which means you can do one-offs, and there's no minimum on that. Kyle's been able to help a lot of businesses that I've been funneling to him just to get going and to, start up. I mean, you don't want to order 100 t-shirts when you're just coming out the gate. And Kyle can handle small orders, large orders. He can handle everything you need. That's Dynamite Shirt Printing, and it's dynamiteshirtprinting.com. Go check it out. My favorite skate shop in the Valley, 5anddimeeaston.com. You can shop online or in store. Their address is 140 Northampton Street, Easton, PA. Their hours are Monday through Friday, 11 to 7, Saturday, 10 to 7, and Sundays, 11 to 5. They carry clothing, shoes, boards, accessories, and more. You can get complete decks down there. They got grip. They got some local clothing down there as well. I know a couple guys that came on the show that they're now selling stuff in store, and they're exclusive to Fucked. They are doing so much for the independent skate community. They're doing so much for the DIY. They're doing a lot in the area with skateboarding, and I couldn't be prouder to have them as a sponsor. Their story is incredible, from starting it when they were 18 and then coming back later in life to opening up what the store is that they wanted. And the two guys down there are just incredible. I can't say enough good things about them. I love that they're a sponsor, and they really help out in the community. And if you skate or want to support them, please go check them out locally. It is 140 Northampton Street, Easton, PA. Online, it is 5anddimeeaston.com. Please go check them out. All Valley Rooter, Jared LaBarba, friend of the show, childhood friend, Never Again Studios official plumber. 24-hour emergency services. 610-762-1656. That's 610-762-1656. They charge by the job, not by the hour, and they are 100% fully insured. They have free estimates. They also do installation and repair. They have a list of things. I can't go over them all on here, but you can find them at allvalleyrouter.net. All of Jared's services are on there. It's a beautiful website. You can contact him through that website. You can find out how to do, emergency services. Where should I call? Who should I contact? You can get all that there at allvalleyrouter.net. Free estimates, fully insured. Jared LaBarba. Check him out.
I'm Mark. They call me Rip. Rips Auto Detail. You can find me on Instagram, Rips Auto Detail, RIPS Auto Detail. You can hit me, Mark, at ripsautodetail.com for my email. So if you want to call me, 484-553-1366. Social medias, really, you'll see most of what I'm doing. But for the business, give me a follow on Rips Auto Detail. Watch what I'm doing. If you're interested in paint corrections, ceramic coatings, anything in the Lehigh Valley as far as highline aesthetics for your vehicle. We're not talking cheap stuff here, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. It just is what it is. I've been working at this for a long time, and if you want someone to take a prideful approach to the aesthetic care of your vehicle and really turn you out a product that you haven't experienced with someone else before, give me a shot, man. It's a one-man approach, and everybody gets the same level of devotion. Obviously some jobs cost more and some less, and you've got to draw a fine line there. It's easy to really obsess over things and go too far sometimes and over-deliver. It's never really a bad thing, though. So give me a shot.
It's the name of the game.
How's that?
That's better.
All right, cool. Never Again Radio, episode I don't even know. Welcome to Never Again Radio. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great, thanks.
Today we are going to talk for an hour on tomatoes. I don't know how I started following you. I don't know how you came up. I don't know if somebody shared something you had or you liked something or somewhere something crossed and I was like, Tomato Girl. I'm like, Easton Tomato Girl. I'm like, what is this? Then I went on your page, and your social media is beautiful, and the pictures taken and whatnot. And I'm like, this girl's just really into tomatoes. And then I just laughed, and I was like, I'm going to do a podcast with her if she wants to do one. And then I reached out. How the hell do you get into tomatoes that deep?
Oh, I know, right? So I guess, I've always been gardening my whole life. My family always had gardens, and it was always like, they grew cucumbers and squash and this and that. But the tomatoes were really the only thing that I liked out of the garden. My family is Italian. My mom's side is Italian, and my nonna always had a garden, and I would help with it as a child. And then every time that my husband and I would go on road trips, we would always look for farmers market and farm stands, and we would find the best tomato that we could, and I would end up saving seeds from them. Then when we moved to Easton, it was right when the pandemic started. We moved in a couple months before, and I was at home with my dog. My husband was an essential worker. He was building the infrastructure that grows a lot of the food for the country in different greenhouses and things like that. So,
oh, that's crazy. So he also is kind of collectively how this started, where he's doing something about, primarily that was involved that you guys were doing together, because he's doing the greenhouse stuff and then you're collecting tomato seeds. Now it makes sense where this is kind of brewing up to.
Yeah, in a way. I did not expect it to be that way or anything like that, because he was originally in emergency service where if something happened to a telephone pole and people lost power, then he would restore the service for them. He built massive solar farms. We had worked together in the past before we got married.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then we moved to Easton, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? I had run a food ordering app out of Hoboken, which was all-encompassing. Everything I do is all-encompassing. I was working 7 days a week, 18 hours a day.
How did you get into that job?
One of my really good friends, she just posted something on Facebook that she was hiring, and the building was around the corner from my house. So I needed a job at the time, and I was like, hire me. So
I can walk to work.
Yeah, exactly. So I went in, and a few minutes later, her boss had hired me. I worked with them it was 9 months, but it felt like a few years. When you're working at a startup like that, it just it carries on and on and on.
What was your job? Just to handle social media? Or
No, I wasn't doing any. Her job was social media. She's really, really good at it. And she and one of my other friends are my inspiration for social media.
It's tough to grind it out.
It's really hard. I was actually the one it was a food ordering app, kind of like a Grubhub or a Seamless. And I was the one managing all the orders that came in. So if someone's cheeseburger was cold at 3 a.m, I was the one who got that complaint and everything and had to deal with it. And I had hired a group of people from around the world that were my support team. So I was kind of HR, kind of a little bit of everything. And
that's probably stressful.
It was stressful. It was really cool though, and it was a great experience. Everything that I've done has been all random, strange jobs that have kind of motivated me towards doing something for myself.
Yeah, I think that's one of the better ways, and the more people I talk to, and even looking at how I ended up doing what I want to do, is all these different jobs that I worked at, whether it was a month where I was a professional, a cleaner, or I worked over here. And then it's you take skills from all those if you pay attention to them, because some people just jump from job to job and then they're not realizing that they're learning something. But then when you want to apply it to something that you actually do, you start realizing oh, this is just what I did over there, but now it's for me. And this isn't that hard because I did all this food ordering stuff and then I can handle this. Or if I want to do this down the road, I've already done that. And if you pay attention to all I jumped around to so many jobs. I don't even know at one point, it was hard to fill out an application because it was just so random, but I take all of that now to push through and work on projects at what I'm doing.
Right. That's kind of where I'm at now. I mean, I have had a lot of different strange jobs. I don't consider myself a career person. I don't know if it's very common for anyone to be career people nowadays, or maybe it's just I have tunnel vision because I'm trying this, trying that. I've done a bunch of different things, but I am at a point now where I really have dedicated my life to tomatoes. So, like I was saying, we moved here,
Yeah.
and my husband was working as an essential worker when everyone else was like at home with their loved ones, and I was in a new place by myself. I had a beagle who was ignoring me. So what did I do? I started
What's
a
the
business.
beagle's name?
Huckleberry.
Nice.
He's the best. I love him so much. So I started a new business and I adopted a weird dog, and here we are.
Yeah. When you got into when you got here, I know it was a weird time with the pandemic, but like, were you like having a little greenhouse, growing things? Did you take a part of your house? Like, what kind of was like kind of the first trigger where it like really started becoming the obsession? I mean, was it thought out before you moved, or once you moved, you kind of like just kind of picked a hobby to get into because you didn't know anybody and you just had Huckleberry and you're like, all right, let's just start planting tomatoes?
Right. That's pretty much how it happened. So we had collected those seeds from road trips. So when we would buy a really good tomato, I'd be like, let me take
Where do you
the
keep the seeds
out.
when you do stuff like that?
I dry them out on a paper. At the time, I dried them out on a paper towel, and then I would fold it up, put it into a plastic baggie, and I have a hippopotamus cookie jar, and all of my
that's so much
seeds
fun.
were in my hippo cookie jar.
Yeah. What made you start keeping the seeds? Just because you wanted to see if you could grow them?
Yeah, because I had a lifetime behind me of gardening with my
Yeah.
family, and I kind of always thought if you have a really good piece of fruit or vegetable or whatever and you want to grow it again, then here are the seeds. You can try it if you want. I mean, a lot of the tomatoes out there, like grocery store tomatoes, are hybrids, and they're patented tomatoes that won't grow true to seed. So that's what's interesting about like not all of the plants I'm growing this year, but last year, because I did only heirloom, you could save all the seeds and then grow the same tomato again.
What were
cool.
you growing in the garden when you were with your family and you were younger? And like, what was kind of like the base of what you guys would grow every year?
We grew tomatoes, cucumbers, zucchini. My mom did string beans, lettuce, eggplant, gugutes, which is this really long Italian squash. My mom grew those one year. They get to be like the size of baseball bats. It's crazy. And I was like so proud of my mom. I would like take the gugutes and bring it with me to work. Like, look at what my mom grew. This is so great. So my mom and my dad, like they took really good care of the garden. They really cared about it. It was something that it kind of brought us all together. My nonna always took really good care of her garden too. And we grew up really close to New York City. So like it was kind of a way to like take a step back from like the hustle and bustle of that area. So I think that I really connected with that.
Did you guys then use the food and like cook together and have like Sunday dinners and all that? Because that's got to be an experience to see where you grow something, you take care of it, you know, you're shown like how to do all of this, and then you have a family dinner with the stuff that you grew. I mean, that's got to be an experience that kind of holds with you and is probably a part of like why you're doing all this now.
Definitely. I mean, there's something to be said for watching something grow from seed and seeing, you know, life spring out, and then the fruit itself, and then you sit around the table with your loved ones and like have a sloppy tomato sandwich or like some kind of salad, or you make a tomato sauce or pizza or whatever. You feel a sense of accomplishment, pride, joy, and like familiarity with everyone around you that you'd worked on something together, and you know, it's producing life. I just feel like it's so cool. And then when you cut the tomato open and see all the seeds that are in one tomato, one cucumber, whatever, you realize the enormity of like what seeds can do for the whole planet. People who don't have money can still grow their own vegetables. And I think like there's something to be said for having that ability. It's kind of a freedom too.
I remember, it's funny you brought that up because I forget about, you know, you get reminded sometimes of what your childhood was like. And my father, he had a garden and he always did tomatoes. And it was crazy because I don't know if it's lost or I'm just older and not, you know, living the lifestyle my parents chose to live. But like the neighborhood would have different gardens. And then, you know, my neighbor Joe, still to this day, he'll drop over cucumbers, and he's Italian. So he's growing stuff and he's like, look at all this. But I mean, I remember as a kid, we would have to go down and pick the peas, and we did corn one year, which was crazy. So like, when you started talking about that, I'm like, oh, I forgot. Like that was a thing we did as kids, is we would go down and we'd help my parents pick the garden. We'd have buckets. We'd bring it back up to the house. My dad still grows rhubarb and makes rhubarb pie. And, you know, like, I think that also is a part of like why I stay in food and like why I, it's stuff like that when you're younger and you go through that, you kind of give a shit more about things than others who might not have gone through that experience just because it means something to you. But that's cool that you got that experience of and especially with being Italian. I mean, you guys are probably doing ridiculous food and making sauces, because my neighbor he would jar all of his sauces and he would keep them in the basement. And so I mean, to learn all that stuff young is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, food is pretty much like the center of what brings my family together.
Yeah.
So to be a part of that and like be able to be like, look what I've provided for you guys, or like even to bring things around to your neighbors, like you're saying, it's a sense of community. People always appreciate food gifts. Like
Absolutely.
If you don't know what to get for someone, you're going to a party, you're showing up at someone's house, bring food.
Yeah, I mean, to this day, Joe will still bring over cucumbers and stuff, and I'll go to the house and I'll be like, Joe's cucumbers, or he'll jar them and make, I mean, he definitely, when they were younger, they pickled more things and all that, and then now that, like, I'm, like, fully into food, I'm like, I should learn how to pickle stuff like they were, and then now I'm asking my parents, like, how to do stuff we did when we brought that back. So now you're kind of cultivating and starting this project, I'm guessing. Do you have like a little room that you took over, or
yes.
How did you go about like laying out the foundation of this?
Okay, so I started with those seeds that I had saved. My husband was traveling, and I was like, I'm just gonna plant some seeds. So naturally, I planted too many seeds. The first year, which was 2020, it was actually March of 2020, a couple of weeks after we all were like, I can't hug my parents anymore. Like, what the heck?
That, I'd bring that up where you couldn't drive.
Right.
Like, it was just so bizarre. I was talking to somebody about how when I had to get a COVID test, and it was so crazy at that point that they were busing people to the bus station, and then St. Luke's had like pop-ups, and you were in your car, and I sat there for 3 hours. But like, we're just like, cool, that's not going on anymore. Like, it's crazy thinking about how the whole world stopped.
Right. It's bizarre that we lived through that. And so, like I was saying, my husband was traveling a lot for work, and I planted too many seeds. And then suddenly I actually did it in my living room on top of my like 1960s electric piano. I just had like a bunch of plants on top of it. And
I feel like that's the best way to do it.
It was great. I would like sing to my plants and play the piano for them.
I was going to ask you, like, do you get into music and like playing music for the plants and stuff like that?
I do, yeah.
Do you believe that?
Of course.
Yeah. Do you feel, because I know when cooking, and it's hard to explain if people haven't gone through it, but like when you're in a good mood and you cook, your food tastes better.
Definitely.
And then if you're like pissed off and rushing, your food isn't good. So like, I mean, why wouldn't it happen if you played music and had things and, put that same thing into the plant?
Your mood affects everything you do in life. Like, I have this one little side anecdote about food and mood, but my sister and I would make my dad sandwiches growing up, like for his lunch at work. Not every day, but some days. And my sister was like just in such a cranky mood one day when she made my dad sandwich that she wrapped it up in foil and then smashed it with her hand. And it was just funny. That's like a running joke with our family now. Like, you got to be in a good mood when you're making food.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you primarily listen to?
Music wise, my taste is really eclectic. I mean, I will one day be listening to like a symphony on NPR, and then the next day I'll be listening to trap music. Like, I kind of run the whole gamut, but mostly I would say like indie rock is mostly my style. I was an emo child through high school. I still am. I have a whole emo line of tomatoes this year. Like, I have like Black Prim and Black Beauty, Black Cherry, Black Strawberry, Black brandy wine. It's going to be really fun. But anyway, so I had my tomatoes set up on top of my piano, and there were too many of them. So I was like, what am I going to do with all these plants? I listed some of them on Facebook Marketplace, and then I have a history in graphic design, and I had studied film in college. So all that kind of came together, and I made a logo. The first one I made was horrendous. It was like Tomato Nightmare, like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes type of thing. And then I refined her, and one of my friends who's better at graphic design helped me out to make her what she is. As soon as I made her, I was just like, okay, I have to do this now because she's so cute.
Yeah.
And then I sold out of all of those, like the 100 and something plants on Facebook. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a website next year, do this right, learn as much as I can. And from that point, I like dove headfirst into growing, learning, and everything tomato. I mean, from like saving seed the right way to yesterday I had my organic inspection, so I will be certified
Yeah, I wanted to
organic.
get into that. I saw you post that, and I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah, so I some days I feel like I'm a little in over my head because like who really revolves their lives around tomatoes or like any particular niche item, but it's been really cool. I've met a lot of people. I've made friends on the internet that are also tomato obsessed, so I feel a little less
There's like a
crazy some
community.
days. Yeah, there really is a community,
Yeah.
you know, and just I think over the summer, or maybe it was the fall, I had done a poll on my social media asking where people are from. And I got people like from Sweden and Russia and, you know, across the country here that are following along, commenting, and like it's very uplifting while you're doing all of this because you're like, why am I doing it? But I don't know. It's just this journey that I decided to try out, and I'm rocking and rolling with it.
I love one peeling back and hearing like where, you know, because it's so cool in the beginning because it's like and everyone always says like enjoy the beginning and the ride because then when you get there it's work, but like you know, what a cool feeling when you sold them all and you're like, hey, like something's here.
Yeah,
like
like-
it's fun. It's fun when the lane opens up, and then the more you keep getting into your own lanes, the further you keep going with businesses or anything in life, you just kind of start learning how to make your own lane and then stay in it. So I mean, even when you said that, I was like, that must have been so cool. Where like, you know, you put something up there, you don't even, yeah, whatever, and then they're gone. And then when
Right.
you start getting into like the logo and the graphic stuff, like it's so innocent in the beginning because you're just like kind of creating, and then you want to define your business, but you don't know what it is yet. So then like, because that was one of the first things when I started going through your social media, like I was like, so then when you said you had the graphic design, and then when you told me in the beginning, like kind of what your background was, it makes sense why your social media looks good. And then you know, you're like telling a story, and then I don't know why I was drawn to it, but it's also like when your social media comes up, it's such a break from anything else I'm watching because I told somebody the other day, I said, Instagram is like turning into like when you come home from school and there's nothing on TV and you're literally just going
yeah,
through
I
the
know.
channels. Cause now you're flipping like this and I'm like, this is like going through commercials, trying to get to MTV in between music
Right.
videos.
I feel that way too.
So like, and then I started unfollowing a lot of stuff because it was just stuff I didn't want to see. But then when I ran into your stuff, it is its own thing. And it's also like, I was like, well, who is into tomatoes this much? And then I was like, well, I like tomatoes and I like cooking. And then like, now it's like something that like when I see it, it's actually refreshing to be taken out
Thank
of
you.
the norm and the repetitiveness of people just trying to redo something and not be original. So it's like when I fell onto it, I was like, and then even yesterday, because it's like you're following somebody's journey if you pay attention to
Right.
it. So like when you were like getting your inspection, and from what I talked to you, I'm like, yo, this is so cool. And it's like awesome to watch
Thanks.
things start coming. So like that had to feel crazy when you started getting your logo, and then like, cause this crushes, this would look good on so much different stuff.
Thanks.
Just from like a branding and marketing, you can put it on a tomato can, a t-shirt, like you can really do anything with that. What was that like to finally see that from, cause I mean, my original was, I don't have any of the art up, but it was this like skateboarding t-shirt logo, and it had a shield in the middle.
Cool.
And then I had the artist kind of clear it out, and then we had the shield, and then that went for a while, and it's evolved into the logo it is now. But like I remember that journey of coming along, and it means so much to you when you have that. What was that like for you to see that thing come to life and then go from an idea and then have a friend tweak it, and then it's like real branded stuff? Especially with your background, you got to realize what you have.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so I'm pretty good at Photoshop. And so I started messing around with Photoshop. I had an idea in my head. I scanned the internet, see if I could find anything like it, because I didn't want to be copying something that was already there. So I kind of Frankensteined her together, drew over her, did a bunch of different things. And then I just took a look at it and I was like, this is exactly what I was imagining. Like it looked exact. And I'm not like, you know, if you gave me a pen and paper, I couldn't do a portrait of you by any means. I could like maybe, you know, draw a teddy bear or something like that. But on my tablet or on the computer, I can do a lot better and kind of mess around with that. So once she kind of came to life on the screen, I was just like, okay, well, I have to do this now because the branding is good. I know it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not saying that to toot my own horn. I just feel confident in overall aesthetic of the Tomato Girl. I mean,
Yeah.
she's cute.
And when you have an idea and you're building and you're putting it together, when you get that logo and you just know that it's it, you almost feel compelled. I mean, the very first thing we did was with Never Again. It was a clothing company in the beginning, and we did I did T-shirts, and this guy Rizart, he was our main designer because he was designing he was designing band stuff for my brother at the time, and he was like, "Hey, hit this guy up." So I was like, "Hey, this is the idea. You kind of do your own thing." And he did this like really cool suicidal tendencies kind of thing with the guy with the flip, the hat up and skull, and as soon as I saw it, I was like, yeah, I'm going to make T-shirts. And then it was like the very first thing that turned the lights on where I was like, hey, I can do this because I came up with an idea and put it out in front of me. And when you create and you have an idea and you get it out of your head and you put it physically in front of you, there's almost like an addiction to following your dream.
Right.
And it's very difficult to turn away from that moment when you know exactly what you're going to do. And then that's kind of like what is the like, for me anyways, it was like rabbit hole, and I haven't looked back since.
Right. That's kind of where I am too. I mean, so it's funny because a lot of people will refer to me as Tomato Girl, and I get that because I am the one who created Tomato Girl and I'm the one behind the account. I'm the face and the voice on my Instagram stories, etc. But I consider Tomato Girl to be her. Like, she's Tomato Girl, and now that she is alive, essentially, I mean, you know, she's not living, breathing, but now that she's here, I feel like it's something I do have to follow through on because it feels worthwhile and
it's
important.
Your baby.
Yeah, she's my baby. And plus, you know, she's a representation of all the babies I have right now. I'm growing 1,000 plants in my house. And to follow up from your original question about, you know, the propagation room and how that all came about. So I designed her and made her because I had written out pretty detailed instructions on how to care for a tomato plant that I was selling to all these people. And then I just wanted to put something cute, like, you know, a sign off. So I designed her, put her on there. It was like, okay, I have to do this now. And then the following year, which was last year, I had started my plants in my friend's basement while I kind of redid my propagation room. And it worked out really well. She had a really great shelving system. We put like a heater underneath. I made it auto watering. I did everything I could to make it perfect.
So much fun.
It was a lot of fun, but nothing's perfect. It was difficult. We encountered a lot of problems along the way. And then when we brought them to my house, the room was still not done, but I couldn't stand like that. I had to drive 20 minutes to go check on all the babies. So we redid the room, and now like I call it my green room because I painted it green. There's a lot of windows and everything, but you don't have to grow seedlings in a greenhouse because I use artificial light. So LED shop lights or like, you know, regular shop lights, like the lighting you have in here would be great for growing. And now I'm at a point where like in the past, when I would like do and build, everything that I did was like I was trying to be as economical as possible. I'm very like thrift store kind of gal, but like I wanted everything to be perfect and right. And I knew that this year I was going to be applying for my organic certification. So with that, I got like very aesthetic black shelves, and my husband and I made this shelving system where like I bought these racks that pull out so I can like, you know, really check on everything, and it came out really well. The plants are flourishing. I have my piano in that room now instead of my living room, and I taught myself ukulele at the same time as like when I started the business. So now I'll like play ukulele to my plants when I have a free moment because, as you know, like life
that
is
all
crazy.
goes away.
Yeah. But it's a really exciting journey because, like I was saying earlier, when you're watching something grow before your eyes, like you're kind of mystified at the life cycle of everything. It's kind of all encompassing, and I appreciate more because of what I'm doing.
Yeah. Sure. I want to pick through that a little bit because there were so many good parts up to the end of what you just said. In the beginning, when you started it in the basement, it's very important to point out the amount of difficulties it is when you start doing something like that because you don't have the know-how. The space isn't exactly the way you need it, and it's not like perfect. And then that's when like troubleshooting comes. And then I say to people on here a lot is like that's when you run into where people give up on projects and things because it starts becoming difficult. But all of those things that you went through, at your friend's house in the basement is all knowledge that you take to level up.
Right.
And it's almost like you started there and then you got to know what you're doing. And then you get out of the basement. And then now it's like you took the knowledge of what not to do there. And I think it's very important to show like the failure of things and the trial and error and the repetitiveness of trying to get it right is how you learn how to get it right.
Right.
And then instead of jumping into something and being like, all right, I'm opening up a store, and then you don't know what you're doing, you fail, and then it's on a place where it's not forgivable. And then you kind of like could really get into some weird situations. So to hear how it started, and like everybody always just brushes over it. And even I do when I explain this place to people, but that's where the learning starts. And then then you step up into what you're doing now and you're learning here. And then now you're about to present what is, you know, like where you feel like you can take the swimmers off your baby and then be like, cool, like we can do this, we can make money, let's make it into a project. And then, you know, and then all the way up to like what you're doing now with like where you're at with it is pretty remarkable that you would even push it this far to be even doing like plants and just even the little bit of knowledge you have. I was like, oh, I could definitely start growing a tomato plant. Cause you were like, cause I'm trying to go down to Plantaholics sometime soon to just start learning how to take care of plants better. But then like watching that life cycle is like, it was important to me to have those plants because I wanted something to have to check on and give a shit about. And like, it's becoming like a thing now where like when the first one I got it, I was just like, yeah, cool. And then my friend Gina came down and she's like, what are you doing? This plant's going to die. And she started yelling at me. And then when I did that whole room up there, I knew I had to pay attention to that because it was work setting it up. And I don't want them to die. But like the life cycle stuff, there is something there when you start paying attention to like growing and keeping things happy and like the sunlight and then seeing how when it doesn't have sunlight, how the plant changes and it'll wilt. And like I brought a plant down here and the whole thing was just sad.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing just went, and then I'm like, well, that's how I feel. And then I was like, so then I brought it outside and then it, you know, I brought it up there and after a couple of days it started coming back and I'm like, this is weird, man. If you pay attention to that stuff, it's crazy.
Yeah. I feel like out of all of that, like the name of the game with anything in life to me is adaptability. You have to be adaptable and you have to like, okay, maybe not everyone, but I think it's important to be ready to encounter problems and realize that they're going to happen no matter what you do. You're going to have problems come up and you just have to be ready to figure out how you're going to deal with them and move forward. Or like if moving forward is not the right thing for you, that's okay too. But beyond that, I think like education and confidence are really important too. I had people last year asking me, why aren't you at the farmer's market? You know, the Easton farmer's market. Why aren't you at the farmer's market? And at that point, I wasn't ready. And that was my answer to everyone. I'm just not ready yet. When I'm ready, I will apply. I applied this year and I'm going to be in. I'm ready. I'm at a point now where if pretty much anyone comes up to me and wants to talk tomatoes, we can have a long conversation about it from like your very basic tomatoes 101, how to start a tomato seed, planting it in the ground. So like the more detailed and the more involved tomato questions they may have about, you know, like the coloring of tomatoes or pruning or whatever they are. You know, the more knowledge you gain and the more experiences you have, the more mistakes you encounter and you move through and pass, the better you'll be ready for the next phase. And so for me, I think it's all about taking time. Something I've learned from all of this is that, you know, Mother Nature is going to move at her own speed. She's going to take her time. You can't rush Mother Nature. And so I'm not trying to rush through what I'm doing to get to the next point before I'm ready for it. You know, I think about that Billy Joel song, Vienna, I think the name of it is. And he says, slow down, you're doing just fine. You can't be everything before your time. I think those are the lyrics. And that kind of resonates with me because I want to do things in the time that they deserve. I don't want to rush past or through. And I know that I still have a lot to learn every single day. I think every one of us still has a lot to learn every single day, whether it's about the person we're interacting with or like the vegetable we decided to obsess over, fruit. And that's a big one, right? Is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? What do you think, Mike?
I don't know.
It's a fruit.
Is it a fruit?
It's a fruit, yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say vegetable.
You can say vegetable.
Well put, though, with all that, and especially the lyrics of the song, and it resonates to what everything that I'm trying to do, and there's truth behind it. And if you would have done that farmers market prematurely, you could have been in and out, and then there would have just been people being like, yeah, I went up and had that. She doesn't know what she's doing, or
Right.
you know what I mean. And especially just from kind of reading you from the interview and when you got here, is you seem to think things out very thoroughly and have a plan, and that you're not just going to half-ass something because you want to show your vision completely. And I think it's cool that you do that, and it shows in your social media and just from the little bit that I've known you. Where are you at now? Because I thought that was so exciting, and I want to pick through this a little bit, but how do you even go to get inspected to have something like that in your house? What's the inspection for? And I can't believe that you pushed this far into your house that you're getting inspected.
I know. I can't believe it either. It's what's pretty funny about the whole inspection thing and becoming certified organic is that usually it's farms that become certified organic.
Yeah, that's kind of like when I saw that, I was like, this is so cool. I have so many questions because you're just doing this out of your house. And I didn't know that you could get certified by just doing it out of your house. Did you have to get inspections before that? Or is this the inspection on everything you're doing?
Okay, so the first step was to apply to have a certified licensed nursery, or just licensed nursery in PA. So I did that last year. So I had my licensed nursery.
Was that a bit of a pain, or is it just kind of paperwork?
No, it was really simple. It was paperwork, and there was mention of an inspector and a walkthrough. But I think because of the pandemic, maybe they skipped that part. I'm not really sure. But I received my license, which I was really stoked about it. Every time that something else.
Does that come in the mail?
Yeah.
Old school?
Yeah, it does. And also online too. So I have a PDF as well.
Hell yeah.
But anytime that I've, reached another level with it, whether it's a small or, baby steps or what have you, like when I become certified organic, I'll definitely do a happy dance. But each time you just feel like a different level of accomplishment. Like, wow, I didn't think that I'd do this. Wow. The first time I planted all those seeds, wow, look how many plants I have. Then, wow, people are buying them. Okay, I'm certified, and so on and so forth. So that was the first step. And then I kept it pretty simple from there. Then I've been working on educating myself, like I was saying earlier. So there's an institute in Kutztown called Rodale. They're pretty popular and famous in the farming community. And they do something called Field Day, Organic Field Day. So I read on their website that they had a tomato grafting station, and I was like, tomato grafting? That's very interesting. So I went out there and I listened, asked questions, and I spoke with someone there, and they were like,
Was there a lot of people there?
Yeah, there were a ton of people there. It was really cool. They take you around on a tractor with like a wagon behind it, and you see like the pigs, and you see the hemp, and you see all the different stations that they have set up. There was a beekeeper explaining everything you could want to know about bees. And so when I got to the tomato grafting part, I asked a ton of questions because it was very interesting to me, and told the guy, Dan, running it about my business. And he was like, you should totally work on becoming certified organic. And at that point, I was like, me? Certified organic? What? Okay. And I guess that was, I don't remember the exact date, but I feel like that was July maybe. Maybe it was September. I don't know. Everything starts to blend after a while.
I don't even know what day it is.
Yeah, me neither. But so eventually it got to a point where I had contact with people there, and then I had my own organic consultant who helped me through the entire process from telling me.
That's crazy. Where do you find an organic consultant?
Through Rodale.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy I spoke with kind of hooked me up. He gave me a couple people's emails, and they actually do that service for farmers completely pro bono. So it's like a very beautiful thing. They walk me through every step. Kagan, thank you for everything. I really appreciate it.
It's super huge to point out what you did there, because when you start looking to get into doing anything, you need information and you need to figure it out. So what I did was I was selling t-shirts, so I worked in a screen printing factory.
Right.
That completely started making everything make sense. So it's like, and that's the fun stuff in the beginning where you're like it's like you're packing your bag and you're on the journey to find where you're going.
Right.
So for you to go down there and then, you shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. And when you get involved in stuff, it's really where all that starts working. And networking is so huge when you start getting into, because everyone that you meet could either be a resource for somebody that you run into who's also trying to help, or you're trying to help, or they're going to massively help you get to the next point because they're people that have already went through it.
Right.
So if you find, and normally everybody I run into that runs their own business, they're willing to help you get through the hard spots because they can relate that it's hard. I mean, a lot of what this show is built off of is that, because it sucks to have to do all that stuff alone, let alone not have any help. But for you to go down there and network and then talk to that guy, I mean, that's the building stepping stones of like building your own lane. And then, because, how else would you figure that out?
I know.
You know what I mean?
It didn't even seem within the realm of possibilities for me to be able to become certified organic, because I'm doing this out of my house.
Yeah.
So my consultant walked me through the entire process, like being like, first you go to this website, then you click on these buttons. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you. I needed this help. I had no idea what I was doing. So even for I tried to fill out all the application paperwork myself, and then he went through it with me. And it was interesting because most of the time they are certifying farms. So they have to worry about things like adjoining land, or like what crops were grown here before, and how many acres is this? And I'm like, my room is 9 by 15. It's 135 square feet, and it's inside.
They're like, cool, easy.
Yeah, exactly. So going through that process was pretty simple. The people at PCO were really helpful.
Did you have to wait long? Because I mean, I know when people tell stories, it just seems like it's fast. But like, was there a lot of drag time in between, like reaching out and waiting, and then you just had to kind of keep working and then just wait for kind of the call back and like figure out what's going on?
I was pretty fortunate that I didn't have to wait too long for anything, and everyone was like really good about getting back to me. So when I had applied, it was originally around the first week of January, and it's just the beginning of April now, so I should be certified hopefully by the end of the week, but I'll be certified soon. So I don't think that process was too long. A few months to become certified organic doesn't seem too long to wait to me, when it's like it's such a big achievement. I really can't believe that I went from planting too many seeds a few years ago to now I have a certified organic nursery and tomato brand. Like, what?
That's
I'm
crazy.
a farmer.
What's the difference between, and how is it divided where it's organic and non-organic? So if you were growing them non-organic, what would be that process as opposed to what you do?
Well, I've always used organic practices. So I would always, my inputs, meaning my soil, fertilizer, seeds, and what have you, have always been organic. Compost too. So the difference really would lie upon the inputs you're using, and a lot of that has to do with pricing for people, because the organic stuff tends to be a little more expensive.
Yeah.
But for the most part, the reason to grow organic is because you're not adding anything that would be harsh or would be bad for the environment. So most people are putting their plants in the ground, and we want to maintain really good soil health so that we're regenerating all of the microorganisms and things that were in the soil. There's quite a few interesting documentaries like Little Big Farm and other ones that kind of go through the gamut of explaining how you can go from like this used up nasty soil to regenerating the land. And it's all based on organic farming, because you want to put everything that's good back into the earth. When you're not farming organically, it's like you're taking everything out.
Using a lot of chemicals and stuff like that?
Yeah, pesticides, chemicals, and, things to encourage a lot of quick growth.
Yeah.
But they're not exactly the healthiest. I mean, you get a winter tomato in the store, it doesn't even really taste like a tomato, to be honest. The little ones are still good. They're growing them in greenhouses. Those are hydroponic, so they're not really working on soil health. But there's so much information out there on how important it is to, give back to Mother Earth as you're growing, because you're taking the fruits from the earth. So, you should try your best to encourage soil health.
Yeah. Have you reached out or talked to any of the greenhouses or anybody around here who's doing stuff locally?
So, being that this is my first year at the Easton
Oh, I
Farmers Market.
keep forgetting that you're new to the area.
Yeah. So I have looked at a lot of the greenhouses. I've like done some R&D when I'm trying to figure out what I'm doing with myself, just kind of observing, seeing what they have. I have a wholesale order set up, which I'm really excited about, in downtown Easton. But I'm pretty sure that my plants would do well in other greenhouses that don't grow insane varieties. I'm growing 28 varieties of tomatoes. It's a lot of different kinds of tomatoes. I know, it's crazy. And I think that they would fare well at some of the greenhouses, but I don't have expectations for the farmer's market yet. And the last thing I want to do is like set up all these wholesale orders and then go to the farmer's market with like not enough plants. You know what I mean? So
when you're at the farmer's market, are you going to be selling the plants and the tomatoes, or how do you plan on kind of be what you're showcasing? Because now that you're getting into this a little bit more, I'm kind of seeing the angles on the business side of it where you can be wholesaling, you can be selling plants, seeds, and tomatoes. So you're not just selling, because like when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, tomatoes. And then I was like, oh, cool. Like she's going to sell tomatoes. But now that you're kind of digging it into here, there's like a really cool, unique business where you could probably do very well, especially with how obsessive and how, and I mean that in a good way, how obsessive and how catering you are to it, that like you could really do some big time things with it.
I think so. Last year, I went around to a bunch of restaurants with samples of my tomatoes and little notes and things like that. And I just want to say that I think that makes all the difference. Like writing a note and something handwritten and like comes from the heart makes a big difference in everything that I do in life. I try and put that like little human spin on all of it. I'm not sure if I'm going to sell tomatoes or not this year, mostly because I think focusing on one part of the business is really important for me. Like I want to put out the best seedlings that you've ever bought. Like I want them to be strong. I want them to be interesting, exciting tomatoes in your garden. And then last year, I think I grew about 600 pounds of tomatoes myself, made a lot of sauce, ate a lot of tomatoes, kept a lot of seeds.
Yeah, that's so many tomatoes.
Yeah, it's so many tomatoes. And I gave a lot to neighbors. You know, the answer to that
your
one is that
neighbors probably love you.
I think so. Well, one of my neighbors saw all the plants and it was before they had any tomatoes on them. And they're like, what is she growing back there in all those buckets? And I was just like, oh, it's just tomatoes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to sell tomatoes or not. I think that there will come a day when I'll evolve into something really exciting where I'm selling lots of tomatoes, lots and lots. It may entail having a really big greenhouse.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Do you envision it? Because I know from my personal experience, and then when, I relate a lot on the show and I try and kind of find, it's weird because it's like I'm searching to understand how my brain works by interviewing people who also, like, I've always felt so alone in how I think and how I do, and then the more people I bring on here, it's so comforting to be like, oh, awesome, there's other people who think this way, and like they get obsessed and they grow and they do all this stuff, so it's cool to watch. But like, in your head, do you picture like you having your own like greenhouse and farm, and like people can come there and they can buy the tomatoes, and then you're wholesaling out of there, and it's your own like little piece of property that's where like you do everything at?
So my vision for Tomato Girl has morphed and changed. Pretty much every other day you could ask me the same question and I'd have a different answer for you.
Absolutely.
So at this moment right now, I picture there being a line of Tomato Girl tomatoes out there in stores, maybe in the local section of like Giant or
Weggies.
Or Weggies, right? Or any grocery store, really, health food stores, etc. I would love to have a greenhouse. So I probably should back up and just say that the reason this all started too was before I moved to Easton, I was in a second floor walk-up apartment and I still planted tomatoes, but I was kind of like in a not great neighborhood. They didn't grow very well. It was very polluted air for sure. So we move out here, get a house. I have like a backyard. I can like let my dogs out. I don't have to put them on a leash to take them out or anything. And I was just like, I have land. I'm growing something like this. This is going to be great. So of course, I would love to have a greenhouse. I think that is definitely within like the next phase of Tomato Girl. There's got to be a greenhouse involved
Yeah.
because I can't, if I'm going to ramp
You're gonna
up,
run out of room.
definitely 1,000 plants takes up a lot of space, and they grow quickly. I move the lights every couple days, and the second you move the lights, the plants are reaching for it. So they start out, they're like about yay high. This is an inch for anyone listening. And right now some of them are probably like 10 inches tall already, and I still have a few weeks before I hit the farmer's market. So you run out of room quickly. But I'm also doing I believe it's called succession planting, where not everybody's going to be ready to put plants in their garden the first week that I'm at the farmer's market. So I have plants lined up that are growing at different rates. So I'm not quite running out of room yet, but I will eventually. And I think after this first year at the farmer's market, I'll have an idea of how many will sell at the farmer's market, how many I can wholesale.
And now you can start figuring out what's going, so that you can kind of start rotating.
Yeah. I'm very much like a go with the flow person.
Yeah.
I kind of will, let the wind take me where it does. And of course, like I'll steer the ship as well, but like I like to follow the path and see where it's taking me. I think it keeps life exciting that way, because you never know what's going to happen next. Either way, like you can have a 9 to 5, wake up, have your coffee at 7:15 on the dot every morning, and like still the unexpected will happen. So for me, it's less anxiety inducing to just kind of go with whatever is happening and kind of keep it light and flow along with that,
Yeah, it's a good way to do things. Once I'm kind of set up, it's like, because I like leveling up a lot, and I like moving, I like changing, I like ripping down and having a new palette. But the more I do it now, like with the next thing that I'm going to do, it's like a 10-year palette. You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to run out of paper to draw and create on. So it's always cool hearing other people that like, because when you find a lane, sometimes when I get in a lane, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm here. And like, let's just hang here. And then like, I don't got to worry about where we're going. You just float through. And that's when like, I'll just find really unique guests. And now you're just kind of booking and doing your own thing. And I'm sure it's very similar to where you're just working. You're working in your,
all the time,
in your passion. And that's also a feeling that, you can't ignore that, because then if you start ignoring that, you start losing why you did it and why. Like, like all of this, is created to kind of keep me out of my traps of depression. And like, and then I started realizing that I need to create and I need to do that. And if I ignore that, now I'm just working and I'm not getting what I need to grow and be happy in my son. And you know what I mean? Like what takes care of me. So like, you saying that, or where you kind of just let yourself go, like that's also a very important thing when you're building and growing into who you want to be or what you want your business to be, because if that's what it's all about. And then there's parts of it where you turn it into a business, but that in between is what you're really addicted to with loving the life and the passion of it, which is you taking care of the plants.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and kind of following along with that has been really helpful to me. And an example of how I kind of like I move things around too, whether it's like the furniture in my house. I'm kind of like, the feng shui is not right. We got to switch this up. Yeah. But with the garden too, a lot of people have noticed and commented on the fact that I do container gardening in my own space. And that started because I wanted to make gardening accessible to people who don't necessarily have yards. I had quite a few people in the West Ward of Easton who bought plants from me last year, and they had them on their balconies. I mean, they were in apartments with no yard, they're second floor, but they have a balcony. They can grow some food, which was really cool. And so for me, I have some space and property, probably about like half an acre behind my house, maybe a little bit less. So people are always like, why are you container gardening when you have so much land? And my answer to that is that I like to mess with the feng shui. Like, I do a tomato tunnel, which is pretty cool. What I'll do is I'll take cattle panel, which are kind of like fence. They're about 16 feet by 5 feet, and I bend them in half. So like they're U shape, and then I invert it, put them upside down, and it's a trellis. So the tomatoes grow in and out of it. I encourage them to do so. And then I have a tunnel at the end of the season, which is really cool. And I can pick tomatoes over my head or like in front of me. It's really, really
That's
pretty
so
and
awesome.
very relaxing. But I didn't like the way the sun hit the tunnel last year. So last year it was, I believe it was east-west, and this year I'm going to do north-south instead, just to see how the sun affects it. So I find that when I have the ability to switch things up, then it again goes along with adaptability, experimentation, seeing what works for you, what doesn't work for you. And I really like that I can, every year, I can refresh my soil, because that's a big thing in gardening. Let's say that you have a garden bed of tomatoes, it's in ground, and you get some disease in there. Well, next year, if you plant tomatoes in it, they'll become diseased. So you have to give it a year off or 2 years off sometimes. But with the container gardening, I empty my containers, wash them out. I go over to the big compost pile we have in town, and I grab compost, and then I, put all my other fillers in and my inputs in, my organic this and worm castings, etc. And then I have fresh soil every year, which really helps make the plants really healthy and grow really well, produce a lot of crops. It's pretty cool to do all that and kind of figure out the journey of the tomatoes along the way, and not have to worry about like, oh, I can't use this garden bed.
The amount of information that you have on tomatoes and gardening is it's motivational to just dial things in and even look into them even further. And your obsession with it is so unique, and it's so cool to just listen to you just freely talk of the journey and all the things that you have going on. And then you can tell where it's leveled up by breaking it down by like when you said about moving that from north to south, because it was east to west last year, the tunnel, like that isn't cumbersome or bothersome or anxiety ridden to you, because you moved that out of the basement to your house. And then like you're applying, adjusting, and the adaptability thing really stuck out the entire podcast that you keep mentioning. And it's a word I don't use enough, because you do adapt when you grow, and you have to go through things and learn things. And that if you wouldn't have done that basement move, you reorganizing all this stuff now, when you have to be having your head on straight to take this business to the new level, you would fall apart from the pressure of it, because it would be too much. But because you did it little by little by little, you're just literally, it's like you have tools that you adapted, and now you're just moving and weaving and literally just creating a tomato business.
I know, it's kind of crazy.
It's totally crazy, but I love it.
I've been having a lot of fun, and my head is not always screwed on straight. I mean, I maintain my composure sometimes, but there are times when like everything's going wrong. Sometimes I had an issue with some plants last year where they were turning purple. Plants are supposed to be green. So I was like, no. But then I learned about, I had to feed some of them a little more fertilizer because they weren't getting enough nutrients. They needed some nitrogen and phosphorus and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
All things that people listening probably like, what is she talking about?
No, like that's the stuff with like starting to learn about plants up there, is like, I want to know why they, like, because Gina started telling me, she's like, oh, this is because you're putting too much water in. The tip of this is turning brown because of this. But like, that's the stuff where I'm like, oh, like that's a healthy rabbit hole to get into. Like being obsessive and being obsessive compulsive and putting an addictive thought pattern into taking care of plants is like there's a ton of knowledge and a ton of things that you can apply to way other things about just taking care of things.
Yeah.
But like, I want to know why my plants aren't doing well, just because like, well, they need a little bit of sun, a little bit of water. Well, there's more to it than that. And like, I started going down little rabbit holes where like, I didn't know you could do like banana water, and then I didn't know you could use coffee with things. And then I was like, dude,
cool.
This is crazy. So like, to have you on kind of timing to where I'm like starting to take care of my plants now, I'm like, I'm going to start growing a tomato, and I could just text her and bother her when this thing ain't doing right. But it's cool. I mean, what you're doing is remarkable. The whole story's awesome. This is definitely not going to be our only podcast, because there's so much stuff that we can do. Anytime that you want to promote that you're coming on, especially by the time your tomatoes are ready, I'll have what I was talking about up there, and there's so much cool stuff we could do with that.
Yeah.
You would crush doing video just because of your background and the things that you told me before, but then on top of it, the knowledge that you have is it flows out of you. It just comes out like, like you just know way too much about tomatoes.
Way too much.
I didn't know how this would go. This is one of my favorite podcasts. This really went back and forth. You were very educated. It's remarkable what you have done from leaving New York, coming to here, not knowing anybody, and then just kind of building this business with your dog. And I'm so excited to see it grow and follow the social media, and because you're also following the cycle of a tomato, because you're only going to be posting tomatoes when they're growing. So that's cool too. Thank you so much for coming on. This was so cool, and I didn't know how it would go. And I kind of just grab stuff sometimes where I'm like, well, that'll be really challenging to talk to somebody about tomatoes for an hour, and it wasn't.
Not at all, right?
It went super smooth.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I want to give you time to plug your social media, of course, because it's an awesome follow. When you're going to be at the farmer's market, or any information that anybody can kind of get a hold of you if they are interested in your tomato business at all.
Great. Okay, so social media, pretty simple. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Easton Tomato Girl, Easton_tomato_girl. Website is eastontomatogirl.com. Pretty simple.
That's such a dope name, too.
And I will be at the farmer's market from May 7th until June 11th. And then if you happen to be in Nashville and listening, I'll be at Tomato Art Fest on August 13th.
Oh, so you can travel and do stuff too?
I can travel.
Yo!
It's just going to be merch there. No tomatoes.
Yeah, that's still cool, though, to get out of the area and travel. I love conventions and doing that. And I also think that that's a much needed thing when you have this much going on, to be able to get out, and then that'll be cool for your social media too. So what is it in Nashville?
It's Tomato Art Fest. So it's a one-day festival in East Nashville where I think it's 20 to 30,000 people come out, and
that's so crazy.
Yeah, it's mostly tomato art and things like that. So if you have seen any of my social media, I have all illustrations of my tomatoes. I do botanical posters. I have T-shirts, pins. Maybe I'll have some hats. I'm actually making and creating a lot of the items for the farmer's market. Like today, I'm going to be making hypertufa pots, which is a whole other episode because it'll take me a while to talk about that.
No, anytime you want to come back, and even if you're like, yo, we should book down the road. These are slam dunks. You have way too much knowledge for these to not be good.
Way too much tomato knowledge.
It's good though.
It's scary, but gonna take over the tomato world.
Yeah. No, that's dope. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll talk more, but there's so much to do, especially with the cooking show coming out. We can get into Bloody Marys. We can get into all kinds of stuff. We can do full episodes on stuff you made when you were a kid. There's lots of stuff we can do. Thank you again for coming on. I'll have all of her links and everything underneath in the info for the about of the episode. If you're a first-time listener, first-time watcher, it's neveragainstudio.com. That has everything we do. It has our apparel, has a podcast, has a video podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube. We are halfway to getting to 1,000 subscribers. When we're there, we can monetize, and then we can just start dumping way more content on. So I don't know when this is going to come out, but it's going to be closer to the move and everything we're doing up there. I'm not really releasing too much information until it's locked in and it's a thing. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and it's neveragainstudio.com, and subscribe to the YouTube.
Thank you.
Never Again Radio. Get into it, brother.